looks like I'll make it a video. He responds to a DOS Spook conversation with Matt, which was not really very interesting, but Matt was talking about me and how I talk about him, which is fair, and so I thought I'd respond to some of that, just to clarify it, I suppose. I mean, I've sort of always pointed out that I like Matt. I'm just irritated by him, because I can't make my brain believe that he believes some of the things he says, that he talks like he believes. But I don't think he believes that stuff. He just talks about it because he's leaving it all open, because closing, is not any fun, in the sense that drawing conclusions, certain conclusions are just kind of dismal. And I don't think he wants to admit those facts. So, yeah, I still think that, despite what he's going to say. Well, anyway, at the end of the conversation, the DOS Spook did throw the bait out. That maybe someday we can, the three of us, get into the room at the same time. We're probably going to have to do that on purpose somehow. I don't think it's going to happen by accident, but we'll see. And that would be interesting. I'd like to talk to Matt. Not that I wouldn't like to talk to DOS Spook, but we sort of have done it, and I don't know where it's going. I don't know whether we have anything to do but lose respect for each other, sort of. But anyway, see where it goes.
Look like I can ever convince Gary of anything, because he's not actually able to admit what I'm saying. He won't hear what I'm actually saying. He only hears,
yeah, it's true. I only hear bonk, 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 bonk. Yeah, that's all I hear. It's like Charlie Brown or something. Yeah, because it's all not based on anything, realistic. I mean, it's stuff that, can so easily be explained and argued from a rationalistic, naturalistic perspective. It's just, all this stuff is just so it's like the traditional arguments about communes in the 60s, and it's a nice fantasy, the idea of a commune, but yeah, it doesn't work because you have to monetize everything. You have to go back to some kind of incentive system, because the basic nature of the animal is, if I can worm my way out of going to work, I'm going to do it. And that's the way we are. So I can get somebody else to wash the dishes, I'm going to do it. People are just connivers by nature. And that's what we are. And it just doesn't work. And this whole argument of some going back to nature. I mean, the Native Americans were, if the Europeans didn't show up and rain on their parade, the South American Indians were going to show up and rain on their parade. They were done as many tribes in North America. That game was going to be over anyway. Okay, they were going to get consumed by the empire. Okay, just like the Egyptians, there was likely all kinds of different kinds of Egyptians at one time, and then they all became, they all got owned by Pharaoh. And it's the nature of the animal. And to pretend it's not is, silly.
And attempts to escape from what he thinks is true. So one of the things that you recognize when you discover the truth of relativity is that
what's the truth of relativity? That facts are subjective? Well, they're not. There's no relativity. There's a truth here. And, Matt knows evolution. He's not ignorant on the subject of evolution. Not entirely. I guess currently he hasn't been doing much for his knowledge base on that subject, because that's not the kind of material he's gravitated to in terms of educating himself. But, I mean, come on. We know where we came from. It's a kind of a closed system. It's a biomass. and the nature of the biomass is not outside the boundaries I've described. Consumption, reproduction, island planet, cannibalism. That's what it resorts to. And the motivating mechanism is addiction, compulsion, biological, neurological, chemical, hormonal compulsion.
You learn to take the perspective of other agents in your environment, and I think escape the sort of solipsism that we're all capable of falling into. But I think
this whole solipsism crap, what does that mean? And there's no evidence of my solipsism. I'm constantly talking about the idea that you're not on an island alone. And even if you are on an island, and yeah, everything we do, we're shitting in each other's food, kind of thing. I mean, it's just not.
Gary is a good example of someone that thinks they've figured it out, such that they have to refuse them to enter into any kind of a real dialogue with someone else, where a real dialogue would require taking on the perspective of that person's reality instead of
that person's reality, taking on that person's reality. I mean, I can wear a funny hat or something. I don't know how. What do you want me to say? I mean, I'm supposed to think like what? An imbecile? I mean, I'm supposed to pretend that in the last 500 years we haven't learned anything, or the last 200, or the last 100? Well, we did. Whose hat am I supposed to put on, Matt?
Just refusing to admit that maybe they're right about something, and instead you've got the truth. I think.
Well, again, I am perfectly willing to engage in a conversation about some alternative reality beyond the reality I've described. But it has to be based on something called communicatable evidence. Now, Das Book has evidence, but it's personal evidence. It's in his pocket, and he can't find it again. I mean, he can't pull it out and show it to me. All right? It's, it's that kind of evidence. It's gone. So, I mean, I can't play with that, can I? And what evidence are you giving me for this, overriding universal pulse or something, this living universe thing? You haven't shown me an x-ray of the universe. You haven't shown me its heart beating and its brain thinking. You haven't shown me a mechanism that makes it possible for me to see any of that logic or integrity or beauty built into it. And I can show you reams and reams just going on forever and ever and ever of brutal, harsh, ugly unfairnesses. They go on every friggin' day. The good die young and die badly. And that's our reality. Huh? Come on.
Gary's kind of retreated a sort of, strangely enough, he calls it objectivism, but I think it's really a kind of solipsism, at least in the sense that he thinks he's figured out the truth and that everybody else is wrong.
Well, it's not exactly everybody else, it's just most everybody else. So, let's be fair, right? It's not everybody else doesn't get it, or hasn't already gotten it. Benatar, I think, wrote his book without never hearing one of my videos, so it's not completely obscure. It's not totally individualistic, but I would argue that it's going to win in the end. Like E equals MC squared, it's going to have to be accepted. It's a formula of that's just too right to be wrong. The formula is precious commodities controlled by crude forces. That's what's going on here. And if we don't acknowledge what's going on here, we're not going to be able to do anything about what's going on here. I mean, it's, sorry, can't just count on it, the magic unicorn showing up. The only way you're going to, even if you wanted to reform, let's say we could disagree on the idea that it's an unfixable brokenness. If just accepting the idea that it's broken, though, has to be done first. You have to first accept that the broken is in the nature of the organism, and that it's the nature that needs to be overcome. It's not some sort of foreign agent that has infected the organisms on Earth and turned them into capitalists and assholes. That's nature showing itself. That's the lizard and the ape behaving. And so I think you're going to have to acknowledge, I think you're going to have to at least migrate that close. You're going to have to at least get that close to the truth in terms of if you hope to reform the human animal, you're going to have to get the human animal to recognize that it's its nature that sucks.
Not just wrong, but stupid. And like willfully, he said about me that he thinks that I somehow know that it's all just random, purposeless matter colliding and this game of the rat chasing the cheese that's unfolding, but then I try to pretend like there's more meaning to it than that. But that's not at all where I'm coming from. I don't agree with Gary that we have scientific knowledge about a mechanistic universe that's purposeless and blind. I think our scientific knowledge actually needs to be interpreted in a totally different way.
Well, our scientific knowledge is interpreted in an entirely different way. So again, he's saying there is some collection of facts somewhere in the Voodoo Museum or something that demonstrates that it's not this mechanistic, deterministic cause and effect. We're an eddy in the stream. Eddies are created in streams. They're very interesting. They swirl in all kinds of weird ways. Some of the swirls can last for a very long time. Things can be trapped in those swirls for a very long time. It'll filter the sand below the eddy. The sand gets filtered. All kinds of interesting things will end up in it. It's a whole mechanism, but it's not a thoughtful mechanism. It's not an intelligent mechanism per se. It's intelligent in the sense that it's doing a filter. It's a filter. And filters always appear like they're doing something productive. But they're not. Some filters are just creating monsters, and we're the newest model of parasitic monster. And if you want to transcend that, you're going to have to first admit that.
I think Gary's interpreting it.
Hey, no, he's there.
And part of it has to do with taking seriously the way that reality is groundless, and that it's more about relationality. That's what relativity really, I think, entails, is a kind of relationality to things.
Yeah, relationality. Again, we can see the relationality in our DNA. We can see the relationship between its origin, its construction, and its evolution. We can see the relationship and the patterns that grow out of that. And the patterns are prey and predator all over the place. These are the mechanisms that are built into the nature. I mean, would you talk all this talk? Let's say the asteroid didn't hit the Earth, and Tyrannosaurus remained the dominant creature, and the little rodent mammals never took off, and it was some sort of big bird, some Tyrannosaurus bird, whatever, and it did language first, and it did this brain thing. Is this the same conversation you'd have if you were a Tyrannosaurus? You wouldn't be able to see. I mean, I'm just trying to make it to change the first intelligence, the possessor of the first intelligence, from a prey animal to a predator animal. Is the life story different then? Is the truth different? Come on.
and that whatever reality is, it's going to always be discovered in.
Well, I think just as it's going to be discovered. I think we have discovered a lot of it, but I'm going to argue, just like I'm going to say that eddies are pretty much discovered. We understand them. Weather systems are discovered. We understand what a hurricane is now. We understand what a tornado is. We understand these things. We don't understand every mechanism of their creation, but we understand what they are. We know how to identify one. We can describe one and put in a category. But we know it's not angels that are making a tornado. It's flying around in circles real fast. We know what the eddy in the stream is doing. There's not going to be anything magical popping out of that. It's going to do the same thing for billions of years. Now, obviously, the tools you can give to organisms can change. But we know that we have already now the tool, the mega tool. It separates you from nature altogether, because now you're not even doing natural selection anymore. We're doing special human selection, or non-selection in a way. But we know this is the mega tool, right? This idea of understanding and thinking, and you can think the truth, or you can think fantasies, and fantasies are unlimited. They're almost infinite. You could speculate. It must be infinite, right? Because I could just put all kinds of silly hats on the three pigs and tell that story forever, and just put a different hat on the pig. But we know reality isn't. And there's a finite truth of our existence, and the finite truth is that we're just a little scheming machine caught in a fight with a bunch of other little machines here on Earth. And we feel like other mammals. We have the organs of other animals. We have the mechanics of other mammals. And yet we just have this little added scheming tool. That's all. Just a scheming tool. That's all we've used it for. But the truth is, it can't go anywhere. There's nothing else to play with. The agenda engine can't be fixed. We can fix the thing that can figure out how to score the goal. But the thing that defines the goal, the agenda engine, is stuck. It's fixed. There's nothing to make out of this. You have to deprivate us and force us to play the game. Give us an incentive, a will. And that's just making us pawns, just making us puppets to a need that doesn't need to exist.
In community, it's never going to be, if there is a truth, it's never going to be something that I have and that everyone else refuses to admit, or that someone else might disagree with.
Well, again, I just don't understand. Why bother using the word truth if you're going to say a truth as if it doesn't mean anything? You're either going to accurately describe reality or inaccurately describe it, and it really doesn't matter whether the majority of people accept it or don't accept it. For all of human history, the majority of people have never understood reality. You could argue. They didn't know what a DNA molecule is. They didn't know what a parasite was. They had no clue what was going on in their reality. So the majority of people did not have the truth. They did not have the facts to construct truth. They made up a story, and the stories were wrong. And now we're smart enough, and we have the equipment to write the accurate story. And I think you know that. And I still think you're rationalizing, have rationalized, an excuse to reject the idea that truth will save you. You don't believe the truth will set you free. You think a story will set us free. And I still think that's the reason why you're doing this. Because I think the evidence is overwhelmingly contrary to the hope you're selling. Anyway, that's enough of that. We get into this whole community and culture thing. I mean, quite obviously, I measure value based on the community, and I agree with Matt on, the evils of capitalistic anything. Okay, selfish science is bad science. Anything done selfishly is usually a job poorly done. So, I concede that point. It's not that I conceded. I'm a proponent of recognizing that horrible frailty in the human organism, the bigotry, the nonsensical capacity to play some winning game. So yeah, that's all nonsense. But you have to do this, to have any credibility. You can't play with the truth like that. I mean, you can't just play this game like the truth is what people say it is. That's not the truth. Anyway, until next time.